Martin is the CEO of the Institute of Imagination. As I said, it's an incredible charity, really placing play, creativity, esteem at the heart of education, but also ensuring that it's accessible for all children, which I love. But it's interesting because if we look back at your career, I mean, you have totally spanned innovation across everything you've done, whether that is being with Apple, iTunes, Disney, I mean, Miley Cyrus, Muppets, you name it, award-winning restaurants, books. I have to say, my mom is Peruvian, so I love ceviche. It's one of the books that I have in my home, so I love that. But yeah, now you're bringing all that creativity, all that imagination that you've been fostering over the years to the Institute of Imagination. So yeah, and also, of course, a rocket being imaginative, being creative are the main values and cornerstones of our pedagogical approach and everything we believe in. So therefore, we are incredibly aligned in everything we do. But yeah, so you work across music, tech, food, education, and those industries actually are incredibly shaped by creativity. And I often seen you saying that imagination is essential, but also having a lifeline for everything you've done, whether it's your personal life or your professional life. So I just want to maybe for you to tell us a little bit more about your career and how imagination has been the common thread across everything you've done.
Thank you, Winsy, and welcome everyone. And Winsy, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you and speak to your audience. Yeah, I'm grateful to be your guest, and so much values alignment and mission alignment. And so I think the more people that can be involved as parents, as carers, as educationists, as people working with children, early years, primary, secondary, it's so important that we work together. So really grateful to be here. As for me, yeah, you sort of hinted at a few bits and bobs of my career. Some call it a squiggly career. Some jobs in the world are straightforward and are straight, and that's brilliant. And people get interested in one thing, and they just become absolute superstar experts throughout their lives, and build on that straight away. Some of us are, like to have squiggly careers, like to be experts quicker in some things and slower in others. Some of us like to delve into some of our early year passions and maybe work in them. Some of us, like me, have enormous curiosity about the world. Some of us, as you know, also get affected by something that might happen in our own lives or something that we might see. And that makes us sort of go, I want to go and work in that to try and make it better. And so all of that has happened with me, starting with, living in Peru and seeing inequalities firsthand, being a child of an English father and a Peruvian mother, and wanting to really understand how we can really see firsthand that inequalities that exist there. Peru has grown and improved, but things are still challenging for many children there. And then coming to this country and again also seeing the challenges children have, first myself as a child and then growing up in terms of the education system. And there's very many pockets of real positivity within our education systems around the world. Your organization being one of them, ours as well. And so that is a real blessing. That is a real blessing. And so throughout my time, I studied in the north in Leeds. First I lived in Colville in Leicestershire. Times were tough there. It's a coal mining town. Margaret Thatcher had closed the mines. It's a challenging period. So there was a lot of inequality, a lot of poverty, and a lot of racism. And I struggled through that. I was a victim in a way. And so, but I could see the challenges even as a teenager there that people lived in, and that sort of made me think, how can this be done better? How can we open up the lives of people here to other things? So I became a youth leader first of all. Actually, I worked in different places, cleaning floors in factories, and then doing a paper round and being a waiter. But I also worked as a youth leader, and that gave me, I guess, my first insight into working with young people. When you've got 12-year-old kids and you watch them grow through the years, watch them blossom as children, but also tragically sometimes see the challenges that they might have, in terms of things that happen at home or in their environment. You're living that through it with them. You will know with your work, Lindsay,
Mm.
how intimate and how sort of beautiful that relationship can be. That care that we have for kids, when we do our work is so, so important, and it's real. And everyone that works in our sector is like that. There's no sort of people that work just for the money or just for, the reason.
Absolutely.
This is a
True
very, very
passion and connection. Mm.
absolutely. I mean, the education, the learning sector is, it's a low ego place. And that's something I think everyone should be really aware of. And that's a beautiful thing. So it attracts people with a lot of heart and a lot of care, a lot of humanity. And so that's how I felt when I was a youth leader. And then I went on to, at university, run concerts for world music because I'm passionate about music. I used to run a club night because I love food and music. I used to run a club night, like an event, a concert called the Global Kitchen, where I would foolishly cook and DJ at the same
Oh, wow.
time. So, but food from around the world, music from around the world. We're talking Africa, we're talking Cuba, we're talking India, we're talking, just folk musics from around the world. That's what I've always been passionate about. And
Wow.
so then very quickly, yes, I worked from the bottom up after finishing university, bottom up, working in a record company, making the tea, and then slowly but surely a few years later running it. And then working for EMI, signing artists like Katie Tunstall, working for iTunes and starting that from scratch with another 4 people in Europe and being on the founding team. I didn't start it from scratch, of course. In the US, in Cupertino, Steve Jobs and our team there, developed it. And then in Europe, we were the people that sort of kick-started that and started that. And I was there from the very beginning when we switched it on.
Wow.
And that changed the world of music in a way. Before that, there was digital downloads, illegal digital downloads by Napster and private and Pirate Bay. And I was like, how can we make this legal? How can we work with those guys? But then along came Apple, headhunted me, and I went to sort of support that team and eventually sort of run part of that team to launch iTunes. Then I worked with Disney. They headhunted me to sort of run their music business at a time when they said, oh, we've got this American thing, this really basketball-based Utah thing called High School Musical. We don't know how it's going to work across Europe. Can you help us launch it across Europe? And so I put together a plan called a localization plan. And yeah, we thought creatively, we thought innovatively, and that was a huge success. And
Wow.
so
Really big.
so was Miley Cyrus, Jonas Brothers, all of those tween properties, as we call them. So I had a real passion for understanding how young people and how parents sort of engaged with stories, engaged with, made it part of their lives. And of course, Disney was a machine that sort of a company that has to sell things, but it also brings a lot of joy to families and a lot of fascinating stories that can help children develop through their lives and help the enjoyment and they're positive stories, and that's what I liked about them. There's they sometimes get criticized for cultural imperialism, and I studied that at university, by the way, but they sometimes get criticized for those things, but they also bring a lot of joy. So I worked there, and then I left there because I had this urge to really work in sustainability. I kind of thought this is too slow for me, and the world is changing, and we need to really work with the environment and really protect Mother Nature. And so I worked at so I left to start my own sustainable restaurants business. So I founded a restaurant business called Ceviche. That was our first brand, and then Andina, and these are Peruvian with amazing ingredients, very healthy ingredients focused around nutrition. I've always been a foodie. I love food. I love sort of finding ways to become more sustainable, using technology. Like we worked with Winnow Solutions first in technology to manage our waste. We won the Best New Sustainable Restaurant of the Year award. Because because we worked with ex-offenders locally, we worked with local schools on nutrition, we
Wow.
worked in different ways with food. we worked on really balanced diets. I worked with nutritionists as well as people in the sort of fitness training profession to sort of really understand what nutrition, how nutrition can be best for people. So I was very proud to have won, different awards in entrepreneurship, sustainability, even in people management. So that was exciting, but nothing lasts forever, and challenges came partly through Brexit, partly through increased costs,
Mm.
and so I handed over the business at the end of 2019, and I really started to focus on children's education then, and continued my work in sustainability by creating a circular economy management organization that helped circular economy startups, particularly in the food systems. And I'm passionate about circular economy and food systems because ultimately I think that's how the world should live. We should consume considering the products that we buy, if we have to buy them at all, and we should consume so that we can put them back in the ground, so they can be regenerative, so they can kind of have further life cycles, so they can continue to work hard for us and or be passed on, or so they can be biodegradable. And so I spent a few years doing that, plus beginning to work in children's education inequalities, which I'd been working for as a trustee for about 15 years
Wow.
anyway, with a wonderful charity called Amantani.
Mhm.
But then the role of the Institute of Imagination CEO role came about, and I was just so proud to be able to, so blessed to be able to be chosen. And that's where I am today. And the Institute of Imagination, I can talk about it if you like, or we can
Yeah.
stop there.
I would love
But
to. I would love to know a little bit more about the Institute of Imagination. And yeah, again, what do you think? Imagination is so essential, especially in these days where our lives are so busy and children definitely. I mean, we'll talk a bit more about it later, but the playtime, the outdoors, everything is being shrunk. And therefore, why it's so important that, we honor childhood, we have imagination at the center of that.
well, yes, absolutely. And last night my team were at the Better Society Awards, and we won the best new program award at the Better Society Awards. So I'm really happy
Oh,
about that.
congratulations.
And that's thank you. And that's for a program called The Power of Play. So that just sort of tells you a little bit about our focus around the Institute of Imagination. I'll talk more about the power of play if you give me a chance a bit later. But yes, to answer your question, um, imagination is, sometimes we think imagination is this silly word and think the imagination is not worthwhile, and and we forget how when we were children we had that power, and it was so powerful. We had the space, the time before technology came into our lives, and before technology comes into children's lives today, before the pressures of daily life are felt on us as children, before the school system comes into us and tries to give us great advice and great training and great skills, but also pressure and stress, and make things competitive,
Mm.
and tell us the issues with taking risks. And so imagination is crucially important. It helps you get out of your context. It helps you imagine something better. It gives you hope. It gives you aspiration. And essentially, it's the foundation ground for creativity. Creativity is where we find our curiosity, our connection, our communication, all our different skills that we need to kind of be great citizens in this world. Creativity is the place where we find solutions to our daily problems. And that could be, an argument that you've had with your dad if you're a 4-year-old child, or a sort of figuring out why you've done something wrong because your auntie told you off, or whoever's caring for you. Or that could be imagining or being creative about, okay, I'm going to make this thing out of Lego, or I'm going to make it out of scrap bits of, cornflake packages, and I'm going to, and then suddenly 10 years, 15 years later, I'm an engineer, or I'm a designer, or I'm an architect. Why? Because I imagined stuff just then when I was 5, when I was at one of your places, Winsy, and I was doing something beautiful, and your team were helping me sort of just play and explore and create and make mistakes. And that's imagination leads to creativity, leads to innovation, leads to problem solving, leads to finding resilience and better mental health. For me as a child, I'm 5 or 7 or 8, it leads to me thinking, I don't just have to be a football player, because most boys want to be those rich football players, but not no one gets there. It's only a handful. Or, I want to, be a pop star and like be on TV or on TikTok. It's like not many people get there, and it's a hard life even if you're there. But you can imagine being a great designer, an architect, a coder, an AI expert, an astronaut, a future space travel person, a gardener, a farmer that does incredible regenerative farming, or that those seeds are happening when you're 5, 6, 7 years old.
Mm.
And to nurture that ground with imagination and create that space for children is vital wherever we are in society, whatever we're doing, whatever background we may have, whatever challenges, whether we're a child in today blessed with being in privileged position, in a wealthy position, living somewhere in the country in England, we might have challenges in learning. We might not have challenges in our, financial situation, but we might have challenges in learning. We might not be seen by our parents enough because they're working hard, and that's needed as well. But so we might also be in a place of conflict, in a place of war, or just half a mile from a from somewhere you might be living in relative supposed luxury. You might be in a place where you're living with 8 people in a room in a flat with 8 people in an area that's really tough, where there's knife crime, and your parents say you can't go outside in the summer holidays. So I think at the Institute of Imagination, I think you work as well in those kinds of, to understand and give children opportunities in different scenarios, to sort of help them grow, aspire, find their thing for the next bit in life, and that helps in their attainment. That will help in their exam results.
Absolutely. I love how you put imagination together with hope. And, that's so much needed, as you were saying. Imagination gives you endless possibilities, and it's that pool of ideas and dreams that can lead to creativity. But yeah, I love the hope aspect. Even thinking about my childhood, I had many challenges growing up, but I always had that sort of like creative permission and that freedom. So I had so much imagination in the sense that I was always playing, to the point I was playing with toys until I went to senior school, and then I realized no one else played with toys, and I was too old, and I wasn't meant to be playing with toys. But and I was also an only child, which means I had to rely on my parents to play with me, which they did, and they were really big. Luckily, they were so big in role play, for instance, writing, storytelling. But I also that meant that I spent a lot of time on my own, and therefore, I had so much freedom, so much space, so much time on my own that my imagination was always alive. I was always dreaming about different things. I will make toys out of plastic bottles that were just there. I will just make anything. I will create lots of different stories. And it's just so amazing how, if you have that power of imagining, you have that incredible freedom. And yeah, and then, as you grow up, you're so much open to, if you're curious, you're just open to all the different experiences. You're always listening and learning. And as you said, that's an incredibly tool and power to have as you're growing up, for a world that we don't know what it's going to be like when our children are older.
That's it. That's it. We don't know where the world of work will be. Right now already, companies, particularly in science and technology, they're crying out for people with skills that are not there because our education system hasn't nurtured creative learning or imagination. They haven't nurtured key skills as well that are needed following that. You need to have the foundation of those skills of curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving to be any good at technology and science. And those are some of the careers of the future. You need to include the arts in there, whether it's painting or whether it's dance, whether it's creating amazing videos. So all of that is part of this and storytelling. And I was just thinking when you were talking about your role playing and storytelling, when we can imagine something else, some storyline. When you were a child, Winsy, and you were seeing yourself sort of being something else, flying in the sky, or being a something instructor, or whatever you were imagining, you put yourself in other people's shoes. That creates empathy. That creates intelligence. That creates a way of communicating with somebody else. Otherwise, you're insular. Otherwise, the ego is the only thing that's managing things, and you only see one perspective. You're never going to get on in life if you're going about your business like that. So that's why this is important. So that's why
And
imagination
that's
is
so
good.
reflecting of your career as well, because having gone through so many industries, you were able to always. I can see that you were able to see so many different perspectives, and then cross discipline. Just pick things of different disciplines or domains, experiences that you had, passions that you had, and just bring it all together. Where sometimes if you're not used to use your imagination, your creativity, you must just see what's in front of you, and you forget to look at, all the other things that can inspire you, and you can be creative about. Absolutely. And talking
Yeah,
about play, then that leads me as well to play, because I don't want us to leave without talking about the states of play and the important work you've been doing for the Commission of Play. I mean, the stats are very saddening. I think it was at least 400 playgrounds were closed across England in the last decades. The time I spent playing outdoors by children has declined 50% in just one generation. And again, looking back, I grew up in Spain. As a child, I will spend my time outdoors, just playing in the town
yeah.
square, in the playground. So the thought of not having playgrounds, the thought of children being so busy or not having access to play in the outdoors, how is that going to be reflected when they're older? What's the impact that these children are going to feel as they grow? So it will be really interesting to talk about, what's your,
For sure.
you've been involved. What's the state of play in England and the UK?
Well, look, so it's through our work at the Institute of Imagination, my work in charities and children's inequalities and children's education in general, that I was chosen. At the Institute of Imagination, we work with schools, we work with communities, we work with libraries, we work with places of faith, in mosques, in churches, and we deliver programs, activities, and events. That's what we do. And essentially, we lean that and we focus our attention on places of disadvantage, places where there's high indices of deprivation. But we also work with companies. We also, people say that work that you do with young people, can you do it with our employees? So we do these amazing corporate workshops. And it's through that knowledge. And a lot of that is centered around open-ended play, project-based learning. It's centered around just creating these amazing activities where you can interact and be free and take risks and have a lot of fun. Kids love it. And so at the heart of that is learning through play. And so yes, through that work and that experience that we have for many, many years, and my work there, I was chosen to be on the National Play Commission. It's called Raising the Nation National Play Commission. Raising the Nation was a wonderful book that was written by Paul Lindley, who's a fantastic entrepreneur from Ella's Kitchen originally, but then he's dedicated his life for the last 15 or more years to changing or supporting children's well-being and inequalities in this country. He's a real pioneer, and he got together with the former Children's Commissioner, Baroness Anne Longfield, and invited me and a few others to really work on a 1-year campaign, commission to look at the importance of play. Why? Because, as you said, Winsy, playgrounds are disappearing because playtime, break time in schools are getting shorter because learning through play in schools is disappearing. It wasn't encouraged by certain politicians and certain education systems. Because there is much more traffic on the roads and it's difficult to get to a place of play. So there are many, and because our children are glued to the addictive nature of some social platforms, not all, some of them are brilliantly educational and fun as well. And, we need both, right? But some are addictive and we're getting stuck with them and the kids are getting stuck. So they're not using that time where they could be out there and moving around and making things and talking to each other and collaborating together physically. Digitally is cool as well, but the physical bit is so important. And so play manifests itself, yes, across digital, but certainly across physical. And so that's what we're trying to do. And so the Commission is publishing our final report with recommendations for policy change, but the real big on June the 11th, International Day of Play, on June the 11th, to sort of but really encourage government to create a national play strategy. Wouldn't it be great to have a minister for play, or have someone in the Department of Education or the DCMS, Department of Culture, Media, Sports, to actually be responsible for this? Maybe they have a quiet title that's Minister for Play, but maybe it is fully. So yeah, but it's all about the national play strategy and so what we have done is we've looked at evidence from hundreds and hundreds, not just in the UK, and this is just for England, by the way, but not just the UK, but also elsewhere, in Finland, in Australia, in India, in various places, to look at best practice, what's going on in different countries, what's going on our doorstep, what's going on at the Institute of Imagination, to sort of say, this is what could be happening in other places, and this is how we can improve the importance of play in children's lives, to make them happier, to make them healthier, to make them more resilient, and help them throughout life in their education as well.
Absolutely. It's such an important job. And yeah, let's hope it does happen. I know there is also a petition. We can share it later as well. There is sort of like a form where you can put your name to sort of like, raise awareness as well. Sort of like tell the government, we need a policy change, and we need to allow children to have that access to play in the outdoors. And so it's an important work as well. But yeah, something that I would like to unpick from what you just said, sort of like the distinction between, there is play digital, there is play physical. And of course, we need a physical connection. And, as you said, there are platforms that, quick hit of dopamine. So, of course, children, highly addictive, but they're also incredibly, there are really huge learning opportunities for children, especially when we're talking about future ready skills where children need to be used to use this technology. So I wonder what's obviously maybe your views on, what are the opportunities that AI, screen time, technology can bring to children, especially when, you're also talking about STEAM, making that accessible to children. So I'd love to hear more about your perspective on that.
Well, there are many opportunities, but we have to find safeguarding. That's critical right now. AI is running away from us, as technology did in the past, and we're still trying to catch up with technology, let alone AI. They're obviously interlinked, but you look, this is a conduit for us to imagine more. So this is a conduit for us to use the tools to imagine more. But there are very major concerns about the tools not being not having the safeguards that children need. So I think it's important for parents, for carers, for educationists, for policymakers to really embrace that, to really sort of know our future is working with AI. It's another tool that's going to propel our speed and grow our breadth of knowledge and grow our access to opportunities and to information. And it's going to help us process our thinking quicker, of course, but it's not going to change us, and it shouldn't change us about how we can be creative with or without it. We can be creative without it, and we can be creative with it. That's where our humanity lies. And we are ultimately the ones that make AI. So we are ultimately the ones that need those skills of critical thinking and problem solving, collaboration, communication, and creativity to make sure these platforms and these tools work brilliantly for us, to
Mhm.
make sure that we use these tools for good, not for bad, to make sure that we create better opportunities for ourselves and for others. And so I'm excited about what the future holds. But I'm also, and that's why I sit on the National Play Commission, and that's why I write um, sort of articles on my LinkedIn, Martin Allen Morales. That's why I write articles about the importance of AI, about us embracing it, but also about us finding ways to safeguard and improve those safeguards for children. Because the age of children using technology, using smartphones, using online platforms is getting lower and lower and lower. And young minds do need to have those other skills of critical thinking, and they develop them. They don't just have them age 2 or 3. They have to develop them with our help, with our support. So adults need to be much more engaged in their children's lives. In educationists need to be supported more within that process, and it's a three-way support system. Hopefully, if those three groups exist.
Absolutely. I like what you say about the parents being engaged. And I think that's something that you also wanted to, I mean, I'm aware of the time, but I know you wanted to touch on the fact that, we tend, as parents or adult educators, we tend to focus, when it comes to child development and the children's journey, we tend to focus on the early years. Of course, they're incredibly important. Those are the foundations. But also we tend to focus maybe on the teenage years because, all of those represent, big milestones, big transitions. But what happens with the children in between? It's so important that we don't forget about those children who we think, oh, they're just doing well. They're now 8, 9, 10. It's fine. I don't need to worry until they hit the teenager years. So yeah, why it's so important to make sure that we focus and support children at every step of their development.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like you, I'm a parent, and my son is 19, my daughter's 17. And so yeah, we've been through those adventures, those roller coasters, those learning experiences, and we've evolved as human beings, as parents. Um, the early years of my children, I wasn't there enough because I was working. I was a workaholic. I was running a business, my restaurants business, and I regret that. Luckily, I have a phenomenal wife, Lucy, and she was there more often, and she was, supporting them and giving them those creative moments, those moments of wonder, those activities of discovery, those taking them to places. But in these last sort of 10 years, I have been there for my children, and I've been very involved. And of course, we have our bumps because, sometimes children want to, when they reach, 13, those first teenage years, they want to sort of assert themselves. When they reach 16, wow, sometimes the boys with their adrenaline want to like, whoa, who's this other gorilla in the house? And, and it all happens. It all kicks off, right? But it's beautiful how, if you are selfless, if you are patient, if you mold your way around them, because you're the adult, you're not the child, you're the adult, and you just support children and just give them the guidance they need and listen to them and see them. I was once in a retreat, and we were made to look at the other person for 20 minutes in eye to eye. What a powerful thing that is. Just try it even for 5 minutes. Just try it. I'm going to look at you. We're not going to spend the time, but just we look at each other. Imagine doing that with your child and just smiling. It sounds ridiculous, but just even you looking at them, just sort of will fill them with joy, with love, with confidence, with security. And that's what children need at every stage. Even when we get to my old age of 52, we still need that from our parents. We still need to be seen.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a beautiful journey. It's, for us that are blessed to have children, whether they're our own or we're adoptive parents or whatever we are, or we're uncles or aunties or grandfathers or grandmothers, or simply the neighbor that really cares for the child that's living next door. It's a real blessing to be with these wonderful young minds.
Agree. Yeah, it is incredibly empowering and fulfilling, right? Seeing children grow. And that's what I also love, that you're bringing all those skills that you were saying that, in educational systems, again, because we're trying to cram as much knowledge as possible. Sometimes there is no space. I mean, there is no space to play, let alone for creativity. And even those critical thinking skills are being a bit more pushed, but there is not really a space for collaboration. So I really think the work that you're doing with the Institute of Imagination, trying to bring that together and make it accessible for children, is an incredible work that you're doing. So why STEAM then?
Well, we don't live in a world that we why STEAM? That's a really good question, but for us it's quite simple. We are, we were started in a way and led by our first patron, Sir Ken Robinson, an amazing educationist, and I encourage you to watch his YouTube TED talks.
Yeah,
But sadly, he
school
passed
kid
away.
creativity, one of my favorites. Yeah, TED talks of all the time.
One of the best TED Talks of all time. Anyone can watch it. It's not just for people that are teachers or anything else. It's amazing, and it just said, look, the education system was built 100 years ago. It was built for us to run machines that worked, in tandem. That world is gone, and the world has changed. We can now be much more independent. We can now fly. We can now do a whole number of things because of different technologies and now AI as well. So STEAM is vital. We don't live in a bubble. We have to sort of collaborate, communicate. So he has these 8 competencies that are part of our learning approach. They call it pedagogy in our cliquey world and geeky world, sorry, in academia. But 8 competencies that include curiosity, communication, collaboration, etc. And then it's important that we do something with those, right? That we kind of make projects and create things and make things. It's like, but that's when you're using a bit of science, a bit of technology, a bit of architecture, design. So so all of that is, we sort of, the language that's spoken is STEM or STEAM. The A is for the arts, and it's not just, as I said, painting and dancing, but it's also a creative learning approach. And so that's why STEAM is important into our work, and it's part of our holistic approach to learning, so that children actively have things that they can walk away with skills. That means that they can work with other children and work in later life with people and collaborate, communicate, etc. But they also have skills of how to use microbit. They also have skills of how to use Zapper or VR or AI or whatever it might be that's a technology, and they can work on science projects with other teams. So this is us connecting with each other.
Yeah, that's incredible. And of course, creativity and imagination is at the core of that. And it has that, again, interdisciplinary element of, just using so many parts of your brain, so many different aspects that you bring together to create one project. And yeah, those are incredibly vital skills for the day of tomorrow. But yeah,
And
Matt,
that's, let me just stop. Just also just to say, because a lot of our education system, there's more and more pressure with some policies and some governments. It's not like that in everywhere, but certainly in this country still, on learning by memory. So
mhm,
write something on the
absolutely.
whiteboard. Teachers write something and they say, right, you got to learn that. That's the class.
Mhm,
That's not. Now, some children learn like that and then they perform very well at exams.
mm,
Some don't. Some of us need to feel it, smell it, taste it, embrace it, touch it, really think about it. That's where project-based learning, that's where using creativity, using play kind of come into it.
absolutely.
70% of children don't learn like that. And,
Mhm,
and that might be children in the toughest state school or in the most privileged paid for school. 70% of children don't learn like that. And there's a whole bunch of children, obviously, with different educational needs. They might have brilliancies in their special educational needs that are not special. They're special because they can perform even better than most people, because if those skills and those ways of thinking are embraced and helped to blossom. And so that's the work that we do, particularly with children in primary age school. we give them those opportunities through that interdisciplinary approach to kind of learn in a new way. And that's a big part of our population that needs that.
And is again, when you leave a school, life is not like that. It's not just one way, right? To look at things. It's not just one way to approach a problem or to approach a project. Therefore, those are all the skills that you need. But I completely agree. Everything at the moment is pretty much knowledge based because it's the easiest thing to test. However, we all know that it's experience. As we grow older, and if we look at our own professional lives, everything is because of the different experiences that we have had, and therefore we're able to utilize that for different things. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you so much, Martin, for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, Winsy. Thank you, everyone.